You don't get to the C-suite by being a YouTube sensation type mentality. I mean, you're going to be the long game, but you set up the environment where everyone knows that you might have to give a little to the team, but together the team achieves more. And so those are my favorite types of coaches who celebrate team flow, not individual greatness.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales.
Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Bradley Hartman, and on this podcast, we connect with construction industry leaders from across the country to share their insights on leadership, personal improvement, and to share practical, technical tips to help you build trust faster and lead more persuasively. I'm excited to bring to you today my conversation with Dr. Pat Suermann of Texas A&M University and Lauren Collins of Kiewit. We have been collaborating closely with Texas A&M University and Dr. Pat Suermann as we have our Safety Spanish program incorporated into the curriculum. And Safety Spanish is a 6-week program that is a blended learning course that includes a book and audio and daily videos, and it fits really nicely into their Construction Science 184 safety class taught by Ann McGowan. So when we were invited to speak at the Construction Industry Advisory Council in College Station, we jumped at the chance as we talked about really the themes in our book, Good to Excelente, on cultural intelligence and influence and persuasion. While there, we thought it'd be a great idea to carve out just a little bit of time to talk about the themes that are really relevant with the student population, this next generation of leaders that are coming into the industry and leadership in general. So Dr. Pat Suermann recommended Lauren Collins, who's based in Dallas with Kiewit, and she was a fantastic addition to our conversation. All right, but first, who is Patrick Suermann? Well, he's a man who has lots of initials after his name, including PhD, PE, LEED, APF, ASCE. I got to look up that last one. He's a smart guy, and he's a ton of fun to be around. And Dr. Pat Suermann represents what we try to do in every episode, bring a little entertainment and bring some insight in kind of a unique combination to our industry. Now, Pat attended the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, where he majored in civil engineering. He then received his master's in construction management at Texas A&M University, and then got his PhD in design, construction, and planning at the University of Florida. As we were doing our pre-planning, Pat just casually referred to this list of leadership principles that he's been compiling for the past couple decades, which was fascinating. He shared those with me and Lauren, and we're going to touch on several of those in this episode. As for Lauren Collins, she is a Texas A&M construction science alum. She had an emphasis in structural engineering and a minor in business management. Out of school, she worked at Clark Construction, and then she was an adjunct professor at Montana State University in civil engineering. She joined Kiewit in 2009, and she'll talk about all the different responsibilities that she had in her role, including managing over 1,000 interns, which seems, to me, terrible, but I'm sure she loved it. I'm sure she was great at it. Lauren shared many insights, including the stages of employee development that we dig into that I think is really helpful to think about where our colleagues are in their journey. And also she talked about this idea of a stay interview. It's kind of the exact opposite of an exit interview. You want to make sure the people who are contributing, that they're happy and they're going to stay at your organization. And she adds some color to that as well. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Pat Suermann of Texas A&M Construction Science and Lauren Collins of Kiewit. So Miss Lauren Collins, Dr. Pat Suermann, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bradley.
Thanks for having us.
I'm thrilled to be having this conversation with you. The conversations we've had leading up to this point have been insightful and very fun. So my job is just not to screw it up. We've got lots of notes. We've got lots of stuff to cover. Lauren, if we didn't have a drive back to Dallas here from College Station, I think we'd be going on a 5-hour podcast, but we will not. You caught me off guard when you said your parents owned a commercial construction business that was tied to defense contracting. Can you go into that a little bit? What'd you learn, or what do you remember from that?
I remember as a young child being a part of the site. I remember sitting, watching the concrete trucks pour. I remember holding the survey rod. I remember being in it. And I remember loving building and the accomplishment at the end of the day, standing with all the crews and everyone being able to look back about what we had done as a team and the high fives and the attaboys. And I just really loved building.
Yeah. The ability to point at something and say, I was a small part of that with some other talented people. And we built that, and that should last forever is I think something unique, obviously, that we all share about the construction business. Pat, let me ask you, we had talked about this idea of loyalty amongst young people. Has it changed? And somebody had said, loyalty for students these days in programs like Texas A&M, loyalty is dead. How do you think about that? What do you see interacting with students every day and getting to know the character of these students?
It's a good question, Bradley. A lot of people, I've been on some academic panels, and I was going to one conference that I could tell they were basically trying to do the usual where they're like, oh, the young people are the problem. And I always shy away from disparaging comments about my main constituents are students. And I can always tell, like, when somebody's like, oh, how about those millennials? I'm like, well, millennials are not in college right now. They are all much older. Like, so you already are showing me you don't entirely know about generational things. They're Gen Z, but it's part of their culture. I mean, they're technologically literate, if not fluent, much more than a lot of other people. And especially when the NCAA, who would have thought that 6 months ago we would have this situation where here in town, we have the largest, everything is bigger in Texas, and it's even bigger at A&M. We have the Guinness Book of World Records, largest sports store here in town in College Station, Texas, because we have the juggernaut of all things Texas A&M athletics. And they posted something the other day that said this image and likeness law that went through recently, they now have branded sports attire for about 6 different Aggie football players, and they had pictures with them and their families. And these are families who are benefiting from their performance, not just the NCAA, not just our university, and so in that regard, the transfer portal is alive and well because everyone's always looking to level up to get their best situation. And so people need to be aware of that, and people need to show that your culture or your long game is going to be that much better. And so it's a challenge, but yes, I mean, turned on its head, it could be a bad thing if people are always jumping from one thing to the next and saying that the grass is always greener, but it's here to stay, and things are changing.
Yeah. The idea of, I think of the NBA where they talk about the age of empowerment, and all of a sudden, these NBA stars were really able to leverage their social media following and their impact and their talent to determine where they go, where it's kind of a new phenomenon. Lauren, you in the past, in your very recent past, were in charge of the program that was managing 1,000 interns for Kiewit at one point in time. You were seeing these students in a different element, right? Seeing what it's like to work for a great company, but also one that is huge and kind of has an insatiable need for talent. How do you think about that? And what did you see from the young talent that you brought in at Kiewit?
Well, I love Pat's reference to athletics inside of academics because we use that quite a bit in Kiewit, especially around trying to paint the picture for them about the skill that comes from repetition in the pursuit of mastery. So whether you're playing basketball or football, you do reps, and you all know what it feels like when that final rep hits, or the last 3 seconds of plank or 2 seconds of a sprint. You are spent. Mm-hmm. And then, maybe you get a pat on the back from a buddy, but more than likely you're by yourself. And what do? You start the next set. You do it again and again and again. And so we really use that analogy to help our young employees and early career employees understand that you will do projects over and over and over again. Right. And the first ones, you will make mistakes. It will be awkward. But on the second project, you've now learned more. You're more proficient. You can be put into a leadership position. And so all the while, there is a need for the perspective around loyalty to one bigger than yourself. You got to ride for the brand so that we can continue to advance you through that mastery so you can pass it on. But to Pat's point, if they're constantly hopping, we can't build on that, and we can't go forward with that.
Yeah, it has me thinking of this phrase that I say to my kids often, and I found construction to be a fantastic environment to reinforce this mantra, which is the lessons in life will be repeated until they're learned and absorbed. And I found myself, and you guys probably had similar experiences, making the same mistake and be like, oh my God, I did this again. How I do this again, large and small, until you realize, okay, right? You don't think of these at the time, but these are reps, right? In the sport mentality, this is putting in the practice. So when you can go on the job, you can truly perform. I'm curious though, how do you balance these two? On one hand, you say ride for the brand, and they said, listen, I've been here 2 years, and now you're telling me that I'm going to go from working in Montana to now Kansas City. Sure, you want me to ride for the brand, but hey, what's in it for me? Any idea, Pat, on how you might be able to bridge that or kind of help people to think about you gotta put in the time. There's no shortcut to excellence or, a great career.
Well, that's one thing that I really appreciate about A&M. Last week, I had a 3-day session that was a leadership simulation, and they're so invested in trying to make sure that we have successful future leaders. It reminded me of when I was in Korea pre 9/11, but it was summer of 2001. We have scenarios where we do war games, where we actually plan out, here's what would be happening on the peninsula of Korea. It was just like that, except for academic injects of this just happened, or you're turning the dials on different parts of the university and you're seeing what comes out of their simulations and scenarios. And that's all the best coaches have the best teams, because it's the team. And they say, believe in the system. And so that's what you don't get to the C-suite by being a YouTube sensation type mentality. I mean,
right.
you're going to be the long game, but you set up the environment where everyone knows that you might have to give a little to the team, but together the team achieves more. And so those are my favorite types of coaches who celebrate team flow, not individual greatness. I don't like the turnover chain or the interception trash can or whatever is the thing, unless it helps the team.
Yeah.
So that's what leaders do, is they set up the culture that the team can focus on each other being successful.
Can I nerd out on this for a minute? The leadership simulation, was this for faculty? Was it for students? Go into this a little bit more. I've never heard of it.
It was for leaders of units and department heads and vice presidents and provosts.
Okay.
And I didn't entirely know what I was getting into, but my problem I have is I just say yes to everything, and then I figure it out later on. And I was glad I said yes to that one. It was really well done. It was put on by a combination of our HROE, which is like Human Relations and Equal Opportunity Office, and then also a consultant. But it was very well done and very professional, and it was really exciting to see that A&M so invested in our future.
Yeah. Just anecdotally, we'll have to circle back on that offline. One of the things that, as I come in and our team comes in for our clients, is we try to help them think of kind of these various scenarios, some scenario planning, and this idea of kind of war games, what the RAND Corporation has done for decades, with the military, I think is fascinating. It's almost a way to gamify it and to get people, get their emotions and thinking about, I get to think 3 or 4 moves ahead. I think sometimes we struggle with that in general as human beings and in construction. So, all right, I do not want to derail this entire conversation.
I do, apparently.
To get us back on track and to build on what Pat was saying, inside Kiewit, we have done an enormous push for listening and listening tours from not only direct managers, from senior leaders and department heads, so that we are really listening to what an employee's own goals are, so that when we are asking them to move, or we are asking them to take on more responsibility as a part of that mastery program, that it really is what they want. And so that's the primary motivator, is that it's their goals, it's what they want, and we're helping them truly be the best that they can be by accomplishing their goals and giving them opportunities and experiences to do that. And that's really how Pat and I met, years ago, was through trying to create more opportunity and expand that pursuit of being the best, not only for students, but for faculty and other people inside the business of academia. And it seems to work when you really highlight what it is the individual goals are connected to exactly what Pat said, the betterment of the team.
Mm-hmm. Can you go into a little bit the listening tour? Is that what you actually call it?
No, yes, we have had senior leaders go on listening tours, and we conduct stay interviews. We conduct focus, groups and teams. We have one-on-one meetings weekly with employees.
What's a stay interview?
So instead of an exit interview, so after an employee has put in their 2 weeks notice or left, we have interviews one-on-one where we ask employees, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Mm-hmm.
What's the challenge, and how, what can we do about it? So it really is a chance to listen to an employee about what they want, what's working, what energizes them about the job, and what we can change. And then we, of course, in true Kiewit fashion and passion around data, we look at trends and look across all 32 different profit centers to see what and if we need to be changing from a policy perspective or enable to offer more engagement programming.
Wow. That's impressive. It has me thinking, I'm looking at I think this is a slide of yours, the stages of employee development.
Yes.
Lauren, I'm going to have you start, and then I'd love to hear, I know, Pat, you just have experience leading people all over the world, different languages, different cultures, different high stakes environment. And I'm fascinated by some of the stories that I've heard from you. There's this, maybe you can describe this, and I want you to focus in on the step that goes from disillusioned learner, the second step, to the third step with his emerging contributor. So maybe if you can, for the audience, paint what this kind of 4-step process looks like. And I think I'm really curious here because it's not uncommon for someone to come out of school.
Yes.
They have an internship.
Yes.
It was great.
Yes.
I get on the job site. It's amazing. And then like a year or two in, you're like, what the hell? What am I doing? Why am I here? These people are screwing me over. I'm making like $12 an hour by the time you factor in all the hours I'm working. Right. And I want to know like how you get people to come out of that. So maybe start here in describing your 4 stages of employee development and run with it from there. And Pat, jump in afterwards.
Yeah, this I'm glad you really find value in this. I really enjoy explaining this to people during onboarding and in training. So what the graphic is it's a person moving up 4 steps, almost like a stairwell. And the first step is an enthusiastic beginner. The second step is disillusioned learner. The third step is emerging contributor. And then the fourth step is a peak performer. So we talk about with interns and new hires, even experienced professionals, everyone starts every job, every relationship. It's not just work related, it's life related. You start things excited. I made the basketball team. I got that job. I'm in Pat's class, whatever it may be, you're excited, right? And then you move to the second step usually of I'm in Pat's class. And
on lesson 2, they're always disillusioned after on day 2 of the class.
Yes, he wants me to
Pat's a lot funnier in 15-minute bursts. What's going on here?
So, they get disillusioned. And then if you have, outside of this slide shows kind of these steps for success, either someone who can remind you of your personal values, the fact that it's an opportunity to learn something new. You really develop a mentor. You identify it as a new experience and an opportunity for growth. You can move out of that disillusioned learner step into being an emerging contributor where you're able to do the work. It's just not proficient. It's not easy. You have to remember the formula. You have to remember the due dates and so forth. But pretty soon you become a peak performer. And everyone's like, yes, I want to be a peak performer. And then when you ask them, the best part of this whole page is, so what happens to peak performers? And they all just kind of look at you. And then you realize, it all starts all over. They get promoted. And then they're excited. I got promoted. And then lo and behold, like, oh, I got promoted. I can't believe they promoted me. And you start it all over again. And the trick to this is we of course share this as a self-management tool, but also a management of others, because no one's going to walk up to you and say, Bradley, I can see that you're a disillusioned learner. How can I help
your heart.
you? Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. I was going to give you some grace. I can tell you're in DL territory right now.
Right? And
Disillusioned learner.
but nobody does that. So
Right.
when you know it for yourself and you can know it for your team members,
Right.
or that they're in the 12th rep of a 15 rep set, you're able to then help them through that using the tools on the side. So that's really what that's supposed to do, is to try and help teams and organizations speak commonly and also create awareness around the sociological and psychological principle of development.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. And being able to put a vocabulary to this that we share, even if we kind of make fun of it later.
Sure.
But
Yes.
it's tied back to reality. At least we can name what we see. Pat, when you think about this, or you feel it, whether it's for yourself or teams that you led, what jumps out at you?
Some people never go up
They don't.
the whole staircase.
You're right.
And those disillusioned learners, they tend to be in two categories. They are so disillusioned that they leave the organization and they're either running to something or running away from something, or they stay and they think that they have friends because people like hearing about their cynical stories, but eventually they always isolate themselves because the only way to think about things is optimistically. And no one long-term can listen to someone who is bagging on an organization. And so I love emerging contributor because you flip your paradigm or your perspective, and you start to, and you can always tell because people who are emerging contributors say, we need to do this. We
Yes.
need to do other,
Yes.
instead of, why are they doing that over there? That's the disillusioned learner. And so that you can see the vocabulary. And I mean, everybody has this on different initiatives. Like maybe you're a peak performer in one thing, but and then
Yes.
also people stall
Yes.
out there. And if they don't level up, or if they don't retool for the next software platform coming out, or whatever it is, but this is a really simple, but I mean, perfect model. This is, I want to go work for Kiewit now. This is a great company.
You're welcome anytime, but
Okay.
you're pretty impactful where you are, so we probably keep you there for a while.
Thank you.
All right, Lauren, we talked about the turtle on the fence posts. What does that mean?
So my good old East Texas grandmother, we would walk the farm and I would see a turtle up on the fence post and I'd say, what is that? And what happened there? And she would often say to me, Lauren Francis, you're nothing but a turtle on a fence post. And I remember looking at my dad one day and saying, what does she mean by that? What is that? And he said, well, when you see the turtle out there, what are you thinking? And I said, well, my little brother Bear put it up there. And he looked at me and he said, you're right, Lauren. It didn't get there on its own.
Right.
Did it? And from that moment on, I realized how important it was to have value and graciousness and humility around advocates who will pick you up and give you a different perspective. And then you can get right back down and keep in the grind of it. And then how important too, when you continue to progress in your career, that you can do that for others. So we also share this image and as a good laugh and joke around being, an East Texas kind of saying, although I realize it's shared in many different geographies, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of a nice way to remember that what you learn doesn't have to just benefit yourself. It really can benefit others.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I don't know where this kind of falls in your kind of leadership list, if you have one. However, as we know, our friend
Yes,
Pat
he
does
does.
in fact have
Yes.
a leadership list.
Yes.
We hold right here a top 20 list. You referred to it in the Laying Foundations podcast that you were a guest on. I would strongly encourage everyone to subscribe to the Laying Foundations podcast and listen to the one with Pat. I think there's a lot of really good nuggets in there. You just casually mentioned, well, there's this leadership list that I keep track of, I've used throughout my career, and you moved on. I stopped and I'm like, whoa. What is this? So I half jokingly, Lauren, I did not expect him to say, yeah, I got it. I'll send it to you. So there's 20 bullet points here. First off, is this the list? Is this the accumulation of a list of your career? Is it growing? Walk me through how you started the discipline of a leadership list.
I forget who told me to start that, but it was a long time ago. And I never did it formally until probably about 10 or 12 years ago, I guess. And what I realized was in the military, you come in and out of organizations so frequently that wouldn't it be nice if people could fast track? Because, I mean, despite what some leaders think, people usually want to make you happy if you are their supervisor. And I'm getting older now for sure, but there was a long time where people, the first thing they saw me, they're like, what boy band did this guy just drop out of? And so I was like, I need to bring some credibility that I actually am a reflective leader. And then also I want people to have a shortcut to making me happy and something that I can immediately compliment them on.
Wow.
And so I started writing things down, and that's a modified, accumulated list, and it's sort of been civilianized because there were some things on there that no one would understand what I was talking about. But that's when you go in and out of organizations, why not just jump to the happy part? And so that was my original intent with that list.
Yeah. Two things jump out to mind when I saw this is number one, someone told you at some point, someone probably told me at some point, Lauren, probably you as well, hey, it'd be a good idea if you wrote down the most important leadership traits or management traits or things that you know are wise to do, and maybe you did them, maybe you didn't, to write them down to make sure you always do them. You took the step of actually implementing that and creating a habit around it. I think that's fantastic.
I'm very literal. If you tell me to do something, I'll just go do it because that's a very simple man.
Yeah. And the second thing was this quote from Einstein where he says, and it's attributed to Einstein, says the internet. So maybe Abe Lincoln said it or, Peter Drucker, who knows? But Einstein is attributed with saying, it's insane for you to expect people to know what to do if you don't tell them. And we spend a lot of time in both English and Spanish with our clients on identifying these standards of behavior. And whether it's 5 things, whether it's 20 things, whether it's 100 things, are we making it 100% clear? Are we removing all confusion about this is how I want you to behave? And you've done that. And I think your comment was, I'm going to cut to the good part. Let's not go through this thing like we often talk about pet peeves. When do you tell people about their pet peeves? It's when you want to, throw them off the roof or punch them in the face because they keep clicking their pen. It's like, why don't you just say, hey, here's the deal. I have this little OCD. If you click your pen more than twice and I'm in earshot, I'm going to lose my mind. Oh, glad I don't fall and, slip on that banana peel.
I hand this out when I get on an airplane. I hand it out to every single. I'm joking. I often wish I'm like, oh man, I should add kicking my chair to this list. Like, please don't do that.
Yeah, Lauren, is there any sort of habit or discipline like this that you have kind of collected over the year?
Yes, I wonder if Jim Smith. Maybe we both got the list from the same guy. So he was the department head in construction science, but he also encouraged us to keep a list. So coming out of the program here, I did start a list, but then I ended up giving it an acronym called my leadership SHAPE, SHAPE.
So this is you. You just came up with this.
I thought, why not?
Yeah,
so
go on.
The S stands for strengths. The H stands for heart. The A stands for attitude. The P stands for personality or personhood. And then your E is experiences. So as I went through my 20s and 30s, I would write down key lessons that I had learned or things that I had observed. And then lo and behold, I looked at this list and thought, gosh, these are all really similar. These are all really similar. And that's where the acronym came from around SHAPE. It's my leadership SHAPE.
Got it. So let's hit these briefly. I'm going to throw them out. I want you to give me like a quick description of each one. Strengths. If you want it, go get it. You can't do what I do unless you have what I have. That's in quotations.
Yes.
Did Beyonce say that or did... I didn't recognize that quote.
One of the very first superintendents that I ever worked with
on
my very first job was intending to make me feel this big. Mm-hmm. He looked at me and he said, you can't do what I do because you don't have what I have. And Bradley, for years, it stuck with me. And it was such a haunting. He was right. I was never going to be a great superintendent because I didn't look like him or act like him or sound like him.
Yeah.
Until finally it dawned on me that's exactly the point. That's why you're on a great team, is that I can only be and do what I can do because I'm the only one that'll have my experiences and my background. And that's partly how I ended up in such, a passion around construction, education, and academic partnerships. That's where that came from.
I love that.
That's the quote I just used in class yesterday morning was from Eleanor Roosevelt was, you're only made to feel inferior when you give the other person permission. And I love that. I mean, you turned it around on that guy, and that's, I mean, it's awesome.
That is great. Heart, the way you treat others has more to do with you than them. I think that's fairly straightforward. We're going to keep moving here. Third one, attitude, trust but follow up. Seems fairly straightforward, but Lauren, I would challenge you. There's a thin line between trust but verify and micromanage. How do you think about this in terms of your shape model?
Based on the fact that it comes from my attitude, it really is something that I will say out loud. I will use it as a part of my communication, whether I'm writing an email or such, and say, you know, it's important to me for the success of the team that I follow up on what we agreed on.
Yeah.
Did you indeed complete this? And if not, can I help? And so it really is more of a place where I'm trying to express my attitude of commitment to the team and overall well-being.
Do you mind repeating that one more time?
So whether I'm in communications or in, I can't tell if we're like re-recording. Should I snap?
No, do not snap. No, because I literally, when you said that, I was like, I need to copy and paste that, because you walked a fine line between, hey, there's accountability. However, if you didn't, I'm here to help.
That's right.
And sometimes I get one of those, but I don't get the other. And I think if you're missing one of those, if you're missing the accountability or the heart, your tone will be off, especially in an email.
That's exactly right. So being able to be right up front with why you're doing it, you know, I just want to follow up and see how this went for the betterment of the team. Where are you? What's the status? And can I help?
Yeah, I really like that. Personality, liked versus respected.
This was a difficult one to learn. It was that at the end of one of my projects, I remember thinking, these guys do not like me. They don't invite me to go have beer, which may not have been a bad thing at the time, but they just don't like me. And then lo and behold, they were picking the list for the next project, and my name was on the list. And I remember thinking, what is going on? And so I went to them and I said, so why did you put my name on the list? I know you guys don't like me. And he said, you're right. Well, the thing is, we really respect you. You do what you say you're going to do. You really put the team first. And so I often use this and sell it to people. I hope that you're never in a place when you have to pick between being liked or being respected, especially when you're coming out of college and you're used to being on teams that you've picked with people you like.
Yes.
But if and when you have to pick one, I hope you'll pick respected. And also, I start a lot of conversations, even with family sometimes, with, I know you're not going to like this, but I trust you'll respect it. And I hope it doesn't take years from now to respect it. But this is the decision I've made, or how I think we need to go forward.
That's really powerful. Last one here, experiences. You always, all caps, have a choice. What does that mean?
That's right. You hear a lot of people say, you should do this. I should have done this. I often say, back up. You always have a choice. If you don't want to do it, you just have to have enough to be able to accept the consequences or rewards.
I'm going to read this first bullet point. Pat, I am lucky to lead a great team. My goal is to help everyone work at their maximum productivity level. That sounds like fun. I want to arm people to become problem solvers and provide clear options. Together, we can be, quote unquote, option pickers. First bullet point, I can only assume because of your discipline and focus, these are force ranked. Walk me through what this means.
General Ramirez was the commandant of cadets here at A&M, and I can tell that he's made an immediate impact as the interim vice provost for student affairs, or vice president for student affairs, because someone came from a meeting with him recently, and they're like, I know General Ramirez says, I mean, bring me solutions, not problems. And that's my wordier, more verbose way of saying bring me solutions, not problems. Because ultimately, I mean, you can tell me about the problem, but the meeting's not done until you and I pick a solution, because that's what leaders do. You got to, like, okay, I mean, you can dwell on it, but you're going to find challenges. I mean, that's
yes.
And one of the things that I think, listening to Lauren too, is that I used to think that, I mean, perfection was the only option, and you see a variant of that. And that's the thing. I mean, as I've matured and I've mellowed, I mean, I've changed some of those. Like, you should try to strive for perfection. Like, I used to have one that was basically like, you should be perfect or nothing. And that is impossible. I mean, it's inhuman. And so enterprise operating system or all these other things, I mean, really people, if you can get to 80%, I mean that, and so that's where, how great is it that you can complement your superstar high performing leaders who are exceeding 80%. So I don't know, that there's a lot of things on there, but that is a big one, because if everyone's looking for the solution, how are you not going to be a great high performing organization?
Yeah. And I remember I learned two things within the first couple weeks in the job. The first one was the quality you accept is the quality that sets the standard. And I still repeat that to my kids, and they're like, whatever, dude.
You don't get what you preach, you get what you tolerate, like Jocko Willink.
Yeah, same idea. The other one was, don't come to me with a problem unless you have three potential solutions. And then you start doing that and you start realizing, oh, I get it. He's going to come in and be like, what do you recommend? All right, just do that. And then you're like, all right, I guess I can just do this on my own. So that idea of option pickers, I think, really stood out to me. Lauren, you identified one. I'm going to read. This is number 18 on the list.
The wordy ones. You picked the wordiest ones on this list.
Dude, just let me do my thing here. This is your list. I'll take it from here. Here we go. You will have ethical moments that challenge who you are as a leader, and that will eventually define your life's work. Realize the gravity of these challenges, and then make a swift decision of which you can be proud when you look back on your life's work. Lauren, what resonated with you about this?
It's absolutely spot on, and it really is about character building. That's what you're doing in those moments. And I really think that sometimes our early career hires don't understand the gravity of the situations and what they're actually doing when they make those decisions. They may pick the easy way or they pick the right answer, but oftentimes that's not really what they've learned. That's not really what we're asking them to do. And so I just thought that bullet point was so well said, Pat, and something I'm really glad to know that A&M faculty and staff and students are getting that from you, because it's absolutely true.
Well, what jumped out at me,
whether you're a leader or not, that's the truth of it, is that it's framed in leadership. But the truth is that your perception and your reality are all based on that one quote, whether you're a leader or not.
What jumped out at me when I read this was I felt retroactively, I did not realize this is one of those moments. Like, I wasn't smart enough. I didn't realize that this decision would have the impact that it did. I was also a 24-year-old knucklehead. So not surprising. That's what they do. Is there a way that you can coach people to understand, or is it all around the ethics of knowing what's right and what's wrong? Those are the things that you know, and you just need to slow down to understand that, hey, this decision might seem subtle, but if you're taking the shortcut and it's not the right thing to do, you are going to be making trade-offs that you will probably regret later.
I think you gamify it. I mean, who doesn't like a choose your own adventure game, as opposed to someone just telling you the whole story in a long drawn out way? That's what we do with our daughter a lot of times. Is my wife and I do scenarios with her. She's a senior in high school and she's about to go off to college, and so the only problem is that she has fast forwarded the solution to almost all of the scenarios I present are to kick the person in the parts. So that isn't always the right solution, though.
It's not?
According to my daughter, that is the solution to every scenario that I produce for her. But no, she's super smart. I love her so much. But that gamify it. I mean, that was one thing that they do frequently, and I learned that I was a cadet at the Air Force Academy, and they have these Cadet X letters or Airman Snuffy letters, and I mean, you pose scenarios, and these are all words I've never heard before. Combined, you punch them in the mind, and that's what we call those scenarios. You punch them in the mind, and then you have to come up with, now what do you do? And I think it's just a human nature. People want to finish a sentence or tell the rest of the story.
Dude, I think we need to put our heads together. Maybe like at a top 20 or maybe like a top 50 scenarios. You just ask people like, what was the scenario? And then you just put it down there and there's no answer, but you're helping other people just share through it. And walk me through how you think about this problem. I think that could be incredibly valuable. That's probably something that would have certainly been helpful for me when I was younger.
Well, especially because so much of what they're pressured right now is right or wrong, yes or no, black or white. And so much of what Pat is talking about in terms of gamification, and really what his quote here is about pride and being able to recognize that this is your choice.
Right.
You always have a choice.
Yeah.
And so when you can stand in that moment and say, this is what I chose and this is why, and just be able to think critically, even if it's a short answer, that's what needs to be rewarded, is not the A, B, or C answer, but the actual fact that they did the critical thinking and this is what they're going to stand beside. And ultimately, it's what they're proud of. And when you can, I think, capture that for them and replicate that over and over, it does become more of a cultural component inside the workplace or, a differentiator, frankly.
If you got some people working a job and
Yes.
other people are trying to work a profession, then,
Yes.
I mean, you're not going to be successful. So construction is a profession, and people who think it's a job aren't in it for the right reasons.
Yeah. All right. Lauren, earlier you gave us a nice little nugget that I asked you to repeat twice. Email communication. I love that. I'm always looking for things that I can implement immediately. This looks like bullet point 13. Be concise. You dropped this on me with like no warning. Like you knew that I'd be either smart enough or you didn't care. Like I have to go Google it to figure it out. Be concise.
ladder.
Capital 4 letters. BLUF. Be concise. Oh, I guess I didn't read this whole thing. Be concise. BLUF stands for bottom line up front. Use it. 1 page is better than 2, and 3 is too many. Walk me through some, for people that are listening, like you can improve your emails and your written communication immediately. And then also segue into that advice that you said someone gave you, Pat, quit talking faster and funnier. Go into both those, please.
The problem with a long email is exactly what you just said. No one can read a bullet, let alone an entire email. And so if you actually put the bottom line at the end of the email, it's probably never received because usually you stop reading after about 4 lines. If you can't see it on a screen of a phone or the first screen of an email, it's not going to get read. So I did have one boss who took that to an extreme, and I was only allowed to send a BLUF and then additional information, 3 bullets. And I wouldn't recommend taking it to that extreme, but there are places in the world where maybe that's all you have time for. And so if you can't summarize quickly, then you're going to be missing out because you only get so much time in front of your boss. And I had a boss who was a really great mentor. He was a super big idea guy, and we worked great because he had ideas and I would have to go implement them. And so I would be so in love with the idea that I made the night before that when I'd see him in the morning, I would want to give him a complete 45-minute description of all the great things that I had done for him to try to impress him. And he told me one time, it's just like radio, Pat, faster and funnier. He's like, you can do the whole plan. That sounds great, but like make it memorable and do it much faster. And that was great advice. He was big on good to great, Collins, and all these. He's a really well-read leader and great strategist. And that was Mike Hutchison, who I'm talking about. So shout out to Colonel Hutchison. But he was right. I was talking too much, just like I am right now.
That's right. Well, I was like, this seems like an appropriate way to end after a 45-minute podcast. Faster and funnier. That's great. You guys were great. I learned a ton from just being around you and being at this construction advisory council meeting we had here today in College Station. I appreciate you guys making extra time. I know both of you are extremely busy. Lauren Collins, Dr. Pat Suermann, thank you.
Thanks, Bradley.
All right, then. How did that go? I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Pat Suermann of Texas A&M and College Station and Lauren Collins of Kiewit. Now, our goal here is to make this the best podcast you listen to, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas for future shows, or potential guests. Feel free to link up with me on LinkedIn and connect with me on Instagram. Now, if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your network and leave a review. Those mean more to us than you know. So again, thank you for listening. We're going to close out with our leadership mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first.